Honey Sound Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Bilko Media Network.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, all right.
It's kind of creepy how you just pop in.
So, dude, okay, so I've been on an OGF marathon. All right, and it is good, but it is also like really revealing in a way because, watching. I remember really liking Obergruppenfuhrer because he was just an interesting character, right? In this sea of characters. And
He's
when
the only one worth watching in the show.
Yes.
Beyond the trade minister and the inspector guy.
Yeah, well,
they were super minor.
Yeah, he's the only one of like a narrative arc,
right?
Like really, because like you could see him like you could see him arc through his stages of believing in the Nazi project, right? He believes, doesn't believe, believes, and but focusing only on this guy makes me realize that he's not a good person.
Right.
He's not a good person, and I think that was what I found so unsatisfying about like the ending was I was like. Not the ending of this, but the ending of I finished episode 10. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
So
what was the end of 10? Help me put some context.
All right. So where are we?
What was the last thing that happened?
He picked up the kids from his wife.
Okay.
Who has run away to the farm.
So I got you. I think this is really a turning point for him.
Okay.
In his grand arc, because from here on out, he seems to really struggle with the Nazi ideology and keeping it going.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows he like has to save face. But if you do finish him, you'll see that come about.
Well. Yeah, I mean that was my impression of watching it originally was the idea that once he is aware, and it really is. The thing is that it's kind of just like a repeat of him getting in trouble for killing the
brother.
With the doctor. It's a repeat of that with greater stakes, but unfortunately, it is still like a retread. It's the exact same.
Right. Well, that's what I think was so problematic with this series. As written, is because they keep going back to the same thing, and it feels like there's 3 iterations of the exact same storyline throughout these 4 seasons.
Yes.
And then you finally get some sort of payoff at the end where something changes.
Yes.
But, and even at the microcosm Obergruppenfuhrer storyline, like you see the same thing, right? He kills the doctor in the beginning, then he kind of regrets it. Then he does this other evil thing, then he kind of regrets it. And there's just this tug and pull all throughout, and he doesn't really go anywhere until the end.
And another problem is that because like they're each season is like its own individuated season with each like having its own like individual like bad guy. It's like these Nazis come in and move out like shark's teeth.
Yeah.
Like they're just like,
And that's really prevalent here in this cut. And I even took some dudes out because it didn't make any sense to keep them in.
Because it's just like I don't know, like John keeps because I almost forgot about the guy who he throws off like his building, and like that even is the same like sort of general plot as I've done a Macbeth, now I must hide my crime. Like he has that now 3 or 4 times, and then his wife does a Macbeth, and that's just like that when I remember rewatching that scene, in this, I was just like, this feels really contrived, like their wife just like happens to like, well, these 2 high society ladies would get in a brawl to the death, at all.
Right.
Like, even if they were really, really upset at each other, just the idea that, like, they're there as high society ladies because they know they can't murder each other because you can't be a high society murdering lady, Like, I mean, it's just, yeah.
It gets weird, especially with the wife.
Yeah, so that's another
I will
thing,
say,
too,
though,
is that,
like, at least watching it originally, the wife grew on me. I liked her more and more, even though she did these, like, crazy things that didn't make any sense. Like, I think her character and the way really the way she played it, not necessarily her character, but the way she played it, like, I really got into what she was trying to do.
I honestly say I don't even know who this actress is.
I don't either. I thought she was the lady from Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like one of the moms or the aunts, but I don't think she is. But that's who she reminds me of.
She's so good. Like, he's such a good, like, I'm serious though. Like, we were attracted to not only because that strong jawline, but but like Obergruppenfuhrer, like that actor is a phenomenal breakout actor.
Right.
And so is she. But she's had, I think, maybe less success because I've seen, Johann Smith in a lot of other media, and I haven't seen her as much. but yeah, no, she's really great. I like she really grows on me. She's the only one who seems to like fully appreciate the danger and situation that she's in, while her husband is kind of just like, I think he's kind of mesmerized by his rank and title. And he thinks that that's going to get him out of everything.
Right. Well, that's what I think. When I look at the story end to end, and you haven't gotten to this end, but you can probably see it too. Like, originally, he was just kind of thrown into this. He didn't want to be a Nazi. He just became of it by default because he had to almost. It was join the Nazi party or die. And he sort of like tricked himself into believing it and going with the Nazis on certain things.
Right.
And to the point where he convinced himself that this is what I have to do and this is the way it needs to happen.
Right. He bought in.
He bought in.
He basically, yeah.
But then throughout the series, you start to see the cracks of his mind saying, wait a minute, maybe this isn't right. What am I doing here? What am I actually doing? And you start to see that fall.
Clarity.
Right. But the problem is, every time he tries to like backtrack or whatever, he by default has to go in deeper. When he like kills all the people, that's an example of going deeper.
He has to further enmesh himself into the political structure.
Right.
Yeah. The time travel stuff.
You mean jumping worlds?
Is it?
Or are you talking about our theory? What should have happened?
Well, no. I'm talking about just like as played out in this. Like all my, I'm really excited about this. So, like I said, here's my maybe project on top of this, and I don't know. I may be butchering your baby, all right, but I think it can be done. The first 4 episodes, I wanna try to Joe and Julify them. I think that they're narratively going to be very shaky no matter what, and we might as well just, move it on through. The road's bumpy, go fast, go fast to the bumpy road.
Right.
Because because the thing is like it was just really hard to get into, probably because I had just like so much Joe and Julia PTSD. I don't think that would have maybe turned off your original viewer. I think they would have been confused at all the characters though. But I think that they can be just like the Kalima, like just I can reap into this story, rip out the beating heart of Joe.
So yeah, I mean, I probably agree. You could probably take out Joe. The only reason he's there was because he was going after the tapes in the beginning, and he kind of set up the tapes and what they are. If you take that whole out, then you completely lose that context when they get into it later on about the different worlds.
Yes, and that's okay. So context is another thing I want to talk about too, is because there are certain scenes in here, and notably, it stuck out like a jarring thumb to me was the cop stopping Joe on the road scene.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, it's a good world building scene.
Exactly,
right?
because my original thought was to take that out, and the only reason it's left in there is the very end when it starts ashing down, and Joe's like, "What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, it's Tuesday. They're burning the cripples again," or something like that. That throwaway line. That's the only reason that whole thing is in there. Otherwise, I would have taken the whole thing out completely.
I think that world building scene is good, but I think ultimately it doesn't save the rest. It doesn't justify the rest of the scene, and it should be excess. Well, also because like the only reason why that scene was ever any good in the first place was because it's the context of Joe's smuggling this tape. Does the cop find the tape? And without that context, it's. So so I think basically because I was basically just watching.
Well, like I said, you could make the argument of taking that out. I wanted to leave it in just because it set that stage, like you said.
Yeah. So I like everything, the inciting incident, because so I've been looking at this and I'm trying to map this on this. I've been very interested in story structure because I fundamentally don't understand it. It's very hard for me to understand. Like my brain just doesn't work in a way where I can look at a story and say, "Oh, this is the end of Act 1." Like I don't have that. Do you have that? Do you have that ability? Do you know all this?
So I think the whole concept of an Act 1 is made up for like a play, right? It's made up. It's not real life. And to me, there doesn't have to necessarily be an Act 1, 2, 3 in the context of the story you're trying to tell. You know, if it just keeps bleeding into the next thing, so be it. And I think that you almost get that here, where it kind of builds and builds and builds, and there is no like major cutoff, to your point. It might be draining. It might be draining for people who don't, I don't want to say appreciate it, but who need it, who need that kind of breakage in between.
It's not so much the breakage. It's just so much the I think people expect their roller coaster ride to like have a certain shape to it, and this just goes up and down, up and down, and up and down because the source material that you're drawing from goes up and down, up and down, up
and that
down,
could have a lot of effect to it too. You know, I can only work with what's there.
Yeah, and that's why I was talking about like big rearrangements and stuff, because we talked about this before this even started. Like Obergruppenfuhrer's story kind of ends when he's in like the Reich Hall, right? You know, like I mean, he's become the president of the you could have just like wrapped that up, you know, and then
I think you could do a supercut of just that and take out all the context of these portals and tapes and everything, and you can just tell that story, you know, at that level. Now it might be even more choppy because just the way it's all strung together. Because I thought about that. That was my first thought with this was, can I end it there and tell a complete story? But the way the characters intertwine and interact, you couldn't tell that story completely while removing the context of the tapes and everything else. So I had to show the whole thing.
So I think I have a problem. Like it's so delicious. It's like the bonbon sweets are too delicious, but like I have to eat like Thanksgiving. I can't just like stuff myself with bonbons. You know. Yeah. The scene where the Doctor Strangelove stuff is happening, right? You know, and you know that's I love that. You know, I love the big maps. You know,
right? They did a good job with Nazi headquarters. I thought
it was fantastic, and the whole premise of like, instead of, oh my God, are we going to go to war? It's this is how we will conduct the first strike. You know, we will annihilate this. This is B wing will attack here. Like, okay, so great scene, fantastic scene. Cannot be in the story where it is. Cannot be in the story where it is. I think I've decided that, because when you're rising the stakes, like you can't introduce global thermonuclear war as like the stakes being risen and then go back down to like, oh, I hope my kids don't get, like executed by the state. Like, I mean, that's the problem is like, that's what I'm thinking of, like big movements around stuff, because that is such a, I mean, it's a juicy scene, but like, am I so juiced up for that scene that like I would be, I don't know. It's
right. So honestly, so here's one of the problems with it too. And I think you're right. I think it would combine better with the end when he kills all the other people, in one giant climactic thing. And then he's like introduced to the Nazi Reich as the hero that stopped the war. The problem with that is, how do you actually stop the war? Because the reason they use in this version is he has live footage of Bikini Bottom, proving that the Japanese have the bomb. So how do you do that without the whole context of the tapes and the multiverse? How do you stop that from happening? Because that's the only reason. And as we discussed too, it's a pretty weak reason. I mean, it might stop it for today, but once they look tomorrow that Bikini Bottom's still there and the tape is obviously, doctored or whatever, they're going to go forward with the plan anyway. But in this, they just carry on like they know the Japanese have the bomb, and it's just, it doesn't fit. To your point. Really, but like I said, if you were to recut all this, how do you stop the war?
How do you stop the war? Because that is the initial building background incident, is that, you have lots of meetings about like the Japanese, the rising tensions, like where does all of that go? Yes, if you don't. Well, okay, aren't we about to hit another war? Aren't we about to Battlestar Galactica? We've all been here before and we'll be here again with the war. Like are we doing that? Did that happen in season 4 again? Because it's like season 4 was like the Black Communist Rebellion, and that was
I mean, that was more Japanese fighting them than the Nazis. The Nazis only take over or try to take over at the end because the Japanese have pulled out of the Pacific states.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the Japanese Empire just retreats, and with no German.
Yeah, there's no German conflict there. The only reason the Japanese leave is because of the Black Resistance, is crippling their supply chain for oil.
Oh. So, oh my God.
So it doesn't work. Which, let's be real, that would not happen. I'm sorry, but you can't take a bunch of rebels in the woods taking down a mighty superpower that is the Japanese Pacific states. It just wouldn't happen. They won't just give up in defeat, after a little skirmish.
Yeah, they wouldn't. Okay, so what they would do is they would roll a step back from like direct colonial control and then go to like, well, hey, you, Mr. How much, Mr. Black Communist Rebellion leader, how much would it take to buy you out? Okay, you're the new president of Oakland, and just divide it into all these.
That's definitely one path to take, but I also think in the context of this world, they could also go all Nazi and just start executing everybody. Because one of the differences between the Nazi states and the Japanese states is the Japanese states allowed all of the, indigenous people, let's say, to live freely, more or less. Whereas Nazi eradicated everybody who wasn't them.
Well, they turned a blind eye to it, right?
The Japanese, you mean?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
They did have.
So, but when they start rebelling and attacking oil pipelines and stuff, in the context of the show, I would have seen the Japanese army step up and just start executing everybody who wasn't Japanese.
I would see that too. I mean, I really don't see why they wouldn't.
Right. That to me is a more realistic response than, let's just throw in the white towel and retreat back to Japan.
Yeah, and it isn't it all because like the princess was like just really nice, and she just didn't want to occupy America anymore.
That might be it.
Is that goddamn? All right. Okay. Yeah. Lose the Japanese story entirely. Just.
And I did. I mean, I cut it out as much as I could.
You did. I mean, it's kind of fun seeing, I was like, oh, hey, it's
when they pop in briefly.
Yeah, it's like you you get something like the Kramer music. It's like the guest star, from the other show.
Right.
Yeah, but oh god, that Strangelove scene though, it's like it's so good, but like the problem is, yeah, it's just where if you're in a 14 episode run and episode 6 is the world might end. I mean, I don't know, and then that gets dissolved, tension diffused.
Right.
Just like the god damn this show is. You're really spinning shit into gold here by making even something this good. Okay, like that's what I want you to take away from all of this is just this narrative mess, this narrative spaghetti soup that you've got here to deal with. Like
well, I wasn't sure where this was going when I sat down to do it, right? But when you sparked this idea originally, and then it never really went anywhere. I really liked the concept. And like I said, I just kind of sat down and started just editing it out. And like I said, I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know where it was going to end up. It just kind of fell into place. But, you can, from where it came from the original as written Amazon series to what this is, I think it's a phenomenal cut and edit to tell that story. Now, to your point, too, like originally, it's mostly chronological. I did splice out the brother part in the very beginning, if you remember that, where he kind of ignored his uncle or aunt or brother or whoever that was supposed to be. Well, that was the other thing, because I think I even texted you this. It's not really his brother, but they're like just best buddies. And he was Jewish, and he sent him off to the concentration camp.
Yeah, we were brothers.
But he kept saying,
like literal.
It's not literal, but he kept saying, we were brothers, I guess in the buddy sense. But one could reinterpret that to say, we're actually brothers. And if that's the case, then Obergruppenfuhrer is actually Jewish. But, that aside, for the first 2/3 of the series, it's almost all chronological, as you see it in the regular series. The back third, which is I guess the part you're trying to get into here because you're only through 10, is more spliced and chopped up and rearranged because I had to do it that way. And you might not catch it when you're watching because you don't remember where it came from, but the part you're getting into is more chronologically out of order from the original, and that had to happen just because of the way that I wanted to finish the story.
It's better. Like everything involving the OGF's family, is good, is narratively focused, it's contained, we can understand it. Doesn't deal with like the Hoodly Who universe tapes that can do anything that they want them to do. Like everything that's focused on even Hoover. Even the Hoover scenes are great. Like I really love Hoover in this. Like the fact that Hoover is in this, and two that he's just like a massive. But this I lost my train of thought earlier, but it was this show is great at building tension and then just immediately diffusing it. Just like oh, Mr. Johann Smith, we know all about your murders, your Macbethings you and your wife have done. Don't be. And then slap on the wrist and you're out.
Right.
And
never to be spoken of again.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, that was like 5 hours, that you spent telling that story. And but that's the thing is you're right, is that there is an overall arc to that, right? Every time that he evades it, it's by going one level up in the right.
Yep.
And it does make sense, like that, like overall that like, yes, sure, you can murder some dude. We don't fucking care. You're useful to us.
Right.
We'll make you Vice Marshal.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, he's trying to step out, but every time he steps out, he ends up stepping in deeper to try to get out.
Every time I try to get out,
they pull me back in. Exactly.
Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a Nazi.
bet you could make a really good trailer in the style of Goodfellas.
Yeah, I would love that. I really did like Seeing Again, and it's really nice. I think that it's really. I think you might. This is why I think the flashback scenes might be better, but I really better placed later in as opposed to very early on. But that's whatever. It doesn't really matter either way. But his buddy, his buddy who wants to take back America and reunite America, like that's his goal. Like I really enjoyed that scene that you put with them. However, okay, I'm just remembering this now. There's this really weird cut, and I want to ask you about this because I do not remember this at all. There's a cut where it's just like there's a couple people talking, and it probably happened in this episode where it's just like and that was the sister, and then it cuts to like a woman fighting, and it like and doing a resistance last stand at a train yard. This is before like the Obergruppenfuhrer and his friend like arrive and have that conversation about like retaking America. But do you remember this at all? Like
no,
that was extremely confused. It was a very confusing cut. Because I'm watching this and it's like, is this person who I'm watching like fight for like minutes, like is that supposed to be this person who was just referred to in the previous scene? Yeah, okay, here we go. It's the Obergruppenfuhrer interviewing the man in the high castle, and then
okay,
yes, like Luke, you have a sister, and then like it cuts to and it's like one of those people supposed to be the person he's referring to. It's very confusing.
No, I don't think so. So
okay,
right. How this happens in the context of the story is what you see with him talking about Man in the High Castle was one of the last episodes of season 3. Season 4 starts with him in the battle sequence. That's the first thing you see. Technically. Oh, okay. So it jumps ahead a little bit. Now, what that battle sequence is, if you didn't pick it up, because they kind of talk about it after the fact, was them trying to eradicate the rebels in the middle zone. So okay. So they're not really connected, but I think I may have edited it that way to almost seem like it is, because there was no other way to jump to that segment. Because we're technically, in the context of the original show, that's like a year later. But I tried to make it seem like a week or two later, just for continuity within the episode. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm.
So well, let me let me pause for a second and let me rewatch some of this Obergruppenfuhrer scene because that will give me some context too. So give me 1 second.
I think you'll find this girl was quite unique.
Okay, so I can see how he got confused. The girl he's talking about was the test subject, which I think was in there. Because remember how there were 3 guys and 1 girl who went through the portal originally, and the 1 girl got through, right? There was because they only found 3 dog tags. That's who is. Which also That's who he's referring to when he says you'll find that girl was unique because she's the only one who made it through.
That anomaly scene, that Stargate scene, the Nazi Stargate scene. Just
I will also tell you that scene with the Man in the High Castle was a spliced together conversation from multiple episodes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
And I could see it didn't really quite come together as seamlessly as I wanted, but I had to do it because he needed to have all this information here versus later on. Because a lot of that, actually it's the front part of that conversation that happens towards the middle of season 4, which is like 4 or 5 episodes after this part. But I had to do it up front because they were talking about Julian and all this other stuff for tapes and his son and all this stuff. Like I cut all that out. and re-edited it in a way that you won't know that was ever there. But I had to do it because he had to talk to.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Right.
Like, no, you did an excellent job. If that is that scene. I mean, the guy is a little loopy and crazy and hard to follow, which kind of helps, So I mean, editing wise, but it came together like it was
seamless,
a single scene.
So you also remember earlier, right before this, he goes and talks. He's looking at the camera, like the security footage, and another guy comes in and tells him some updates. That is also 2 separate scenes spliced together, just for again continuity. I only wanted to come to this once because again, they keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I spliced it all together for one take to go see Man in the High Castle, where he goes back to there 2 or 3 times over the course of the 2 seasons, and it just made a lot more sense, doing it all at once now versus later on, because it would have been choppy if I did it later on again. Like I said, half that conversation is about Julian and his son, who he hasn't even met yet at this point, right? So, he's talking about, oh, I met my son, what should I do, and all this and that, or they talk about Julian, about stuff I cut out. It's just, it's a half conversation that doesn't make any sense if you do it as written, and if I would have cut that out. So I just spliced everything together and try to do it as seamlessly as I possibly can, and I think I did a pretty darn good job of being able to do that.
He did a pretty good. Okay. You see, you did an excellent job of splicing that scene together. Okay, so at this point in the show, he's actually gone to see his son in the universe.
Correct.
That's interesting. Okay, wow.
See, I did not want him to travel yet.
Mm-hmm. Because I knew he had a tape
of his son.
Of his son,
right?
But I didn't know.
Right, he goes to see his son, I think, in the middle of season 3, and I cut all that out and saved it to the end.
That's good.
Which will make a lot more sense when you see it. But in doing so, right, I had to retweak some of these conversations in between that, and this was one of them.
Oh, I see the next episode. I'm sneak previewing the next episode. The next episode has my favorite character, which is like Himmler's wife, who's just like the scariest motherfucking person.
Right.
It's just like, how could you make Himmler even more terrifying? It's like, make a woman and make him like carry around this dead flower that he had preserved.
I remember the flower. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's sort of like, oh, I'm dealing, and that's the great thing, because like when she's gone to the country and she has to come back, and she becomes such a better audience surrogate than anybody in this show, because she's just like, this is the crazy people. This is I'm in the bad place,
right?
So, she's just trying to figure out how to survive. That's engaging. Does she still blow herself up by like suicide? Because that was just a whiff, I feel, for her character.
Yes, because if you call it a suicide, right? Because she calls it in, or she tells the Rebel Alliance where her husband will be on the train, so that they can then blow up the train. But in blowing up the train, her husband asked her to come with her to ultimately see her son, but she couldn't say no, otherwise he'd get suspicious. So she went with her. It was in some sort of dumb self-sacrifice to save her kids. She knows she's going to die, which she did, because when the train blew up, she died. But Obergruppenfuhrer survived the train crash.
So dumb.
Right.
So dumb.
It was dumb.
So dumb that it just like, well, you, I guess, frail woman, like would die, but Obergruppenfuhrer, like, yeah, exactly, one car over from you.
No, they're in the same car. They're having a conversation, and she's like, "I did this, John. I told him where you'd be," and then they blow it up, and she dies as a result of that, which was so dumb. And he lives for now, and ultimately dies as a result of the firefight that pursues after in the real show. But I didn't kill him off. I made him survive, because that was not a fitting end for Obergruppenfuhrer.
Is there any way, I wonder, to cut out the socialite lady who Himmler says, well, we know all about your perversions.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're talking about the filmmaker?
The lesbian. Yes, the lesbian filmmaker. Yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about cutting out her entire thing, but I kind of like the film that she made, and the manipulation that goes into it.
It's good. It's good world building, like,
right, and that's all that it is. That's all that it is, know.
Right.
But here's the thing too, because her reporter friend, not the filmmaker, but the reporter, right? And maybe there's a way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one who digs up the dirt on Hoover, which ultimately uses to take him down, or to stop that initial. Remember, and I guess you've gotten to it already, where Hoover has all this evidence on Obergruppenfuhrer, and he's going to reveal it, but the president of America at the time, was working with Hoover to take down Obergruppenfuhrer, but then all of a sudden Hoover said, I don't have any evidence. I don't know what you're talking about. And even in the series, I didn't even cut anything out for that. In the series, it was confusing of what happened. But when you go back and rewatch it again and again and again, what happened was Obergruppenfuhrer confronted the reporter and said, dig up some dirt on Hoover for me to use. And so that's what he did. And you ultimately, I don't even think, find out what dirt he has on Hoover that made him change his mind. But that's what happened there.
So I thought it was like he became the president or the Reichsmarshal or something. The Reichsmarshal is president, right?
I would think, yes. But back in the day, there was another vice marshal, right, who was working with Hoover before, and they were trying to dig up...
Wait, that wasn't a Reichsmarshal, though, who was working with Hoover. That was like one of his rivals in, I think,
that was the vice marshal, and then he resigned because... I forget why. I think they forced him out for some reason.
No, there was that confrontation with Hoover.
That's what I'm talking about, because he
Himmler and
he claims he has evidence, but then when he had nothing, Himmler was like, it is a very serious offense to charge another Nazi official with these charges without evidence, and he strongly encouraged him to resign, which he did, and ultimately got assassinated. Because of that, and Himmler's like, that was close, John. If this would have gotten out, we would be dragging away.
Yes, I remember that scene, and it's like that would have been you that would have been strong marched under that door. Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I love Himmler, as an actor. He did a
good job, and I think he's playing Hitler. Really, I mean,
he really is playing Hitler. That is. Well, nobody knows who Himmler is, I think. So, you're just going to be a Nazi.
Right.
You're just going to
act like Hitler.
You're just going to play. You're going to act like Hitler. Which, I mean, honestly, the thing is that in this universe, though, go with what you know.
Right.
That's
it works.
What would work. Right. So, he would be very Hitlerish, but it would. I think for that lady, though, I think it's a rare thing where I think that you may actually need to add a scene. And there's a scene where her and the reporter lady are sleeping together, because she just disappears when Himmler says, "We know all about your perversions." And she was she was introduced, and she's introduced pretty late, right?
Yeah.
So and the focus is on her a lot. So we should I guess be aware of her danger, her precarity within the state, and why that is, because you have a bit in the very beginning where you introduce her where she's clearly flirting with the other lady.
Yeah, and
right?
there was actually a love sex scene between them that I ultimately took out because it just didn't fit and feel right with the context of everything else I cut.
Okay, all right, but I don't know. Maybe if there's a makeout scene, something to show that they're sexually attracted, the verboten love, right? Right. Is there, right? Because she just gets kind of yanked off, and you're like, huh? What? But you don't even really know. You don't notice it,
right? Because she's just a minor character, and
it's a minor complaint too.
But that yank off is the explanation for why you never see her again. Even though it's not fully explained, and I guess in this cut, it can be inferred. Yeah. But Yeah,
it could be. It definitely could be inferred. I mean, they aren't subtle. They're not subtle about the amount of eye-to-eye contact that's going on in that first initial scene.
Right.
So yeah.
But I mean, like to your point, I did debate cutting that down even further to really streamline that, but for whatever reason, I left it in.
This has been a presentation of Honey Sound Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Bilko Media Network.